I saw in the paper today that Mount Vernon copied all of the stuff we did.
Okay, Brian, we're on.
Okay, great. Well, I would like to welcome everyone tuning in to the second Police Community Forum. Again, as I said the first time, my goal is to talk as little as possible and to listen as much as possible. So in order to do that, we'll need participation from the audience. Larry, I think what we're going to do is have them raise their hand and then we'll promote them. And that's really what we want to do is hear from the community as much as possible and hear, positive things, negative things, thoughts about how to have things better, hear about what we're doing well, whatever's on your mind is kind of fair game. With that being said, I will turn it over to Mayo Bartlett, who has been our kind of lead, facilitator for these meetings. And maybe he'd like to say a couple words to, set tonight up a little bit. Mayo?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mayor. It's been our pleasure to work together to try to come up with a plan that will protect the interests of the people of Irvington as well as the police department, and to allow the department to have the tools so that the officers will be in a position to know that they have the very best that's available in terms of training as well as equipment, and even more so, so that there can be the strongest relationship between the community and law enforcement. And toward that end, I just want to thank all of the members of our task force. And in particular, I feel that I have to thank the Irvington Police Department for being just a tremendous partner and for open, honest conversations and debate, and that hopefully will allow us to be the best that we can possibly be. So tonight, and I've also been tremendously fortunate to have Maria Imperial as my co-facilitator, and Maria's been phenomenal. And Maria, thank you very much for everything. The purpose of this evening is for us to hear from members of the community so that we can make sure that we are considering everything that we can as we do the best that we can to move forward and to create a blueprint for the Irvington Police Department going forward. So we are here primarily to listen to suggestions, to hear comments, and we will take those comments and suggestions and we will consider them. So I thank everyone for their time and for your dedication and for your love of the village of Irvington and for you taking this opportunity to share your perceptions with us. Thank you very much, Mayor.
So, Mayo, before we get started or Maria goes further, I just want to let you know that I'll be putting in the chat box for the attendees, I'll be putting a link to the recommendations document that was released over the weekend, and then a link to the preliminary results of the community survey.
Thank you very much.
Just so people have that. It was in the emails we sent out, but just so they have it here.
Wonderful, thank you.
Well,
I don't know if you have any kind of summary of where we are and, setting up if anyone has any questions, but maybe you can introduce that.
Certainly. So we have worked on, we're working in the process at least of completing a report that we will submit to the governor. Again, the recommendations are available, and each recommendation came from the efforts of two primary working groups that dedicated the majority of the last several months toward evaluating different disciplines. And then ultimately they were voted on by the full body of the task force. And there was a tremendous amount of discussion that went into the formulation of the recommendations. And again, we were very fortunate that we were able to work with members of the police department. We had very honest and open give and take from them. And it was much more than I think I would have expected. And I did expect to have it, but not to the level that we did. I think that the level of interest and dedication has been remarkable. And so we're coming to the culmination of this part of the process, and the public input is important. It's pivotal. It's essential that we're able to hear things that are experiences that members of the public have had, whether it's in the form of a compliment or whether it's the form of a suggestion. And those are the types of comments that will allow us to make sure that we move forward in the best possible way. And it's really only through that give and take and through hearing from members of the public that we're going to really have a full assessment of where the department is. So our report is due. It has to be submitted to the governor by April 1st. And we're on schedule to have that done. And the other thing is that we have committed to continuing to work going forward and periodically evaluating where we are so that we can make sure that the Irvington Police Department will always be on the best footing and it'll always be able to take advantage of best practices, whether it's through training or through acquisition of new technology that can implement, help them to better implement the policies of the Irvington Police Department. So what we would ask is, as you may have a comment, it's not a question and answer process. It's going to be instead an opportunity for us to listen to the comments of the public. So I just want to mention that so that you don't expect that we will be debating any particular policy or recommendation, but we're open certainly to hearing any perspectives. Thank you.
With that, if anyone has any comments, you can just raise your hand or send a message in the Q&A, which we can address. And if there aren't any right up front, I think we can, one of the things we can do is that we realize that the results of the community survey were literally just posted this morning, the link to those. And so it may be helpful, not only for the public, but also the committee itself to just kind of run through those questions. Any questions from the public that come up, we can certainly answer, or not questions, but comments we can take. But if the committee wants to do that, I'm happy to share the screen and run through the results. I don't know that we're necessarily going to sit and analyze them, but at least run through and see what we have for those that haven't seen it before. Does that sound reasonable? Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Just give me a second, and I'll start right in with the questions themselves. Everyone can see those? Yes? Okay. All right. So, Maria, do you want to run through the questions quickly as we scroll through them?
Sure. Overall, how satisfied are you with the Irvington Police Department? So 64%. Is this what you want me to do, Larry?
Yeah, just highlighting that. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we can see the results necessarily, but just to, but again, 846 people answered that question. We had a very robust response. So.
Right. And so 90% are somewhat or very satisfied. Okay. How much do you agree or disagree with the following statement? I feel safe in Irvington. Gosh, 99% somewhat agree with the statement. How much do you agree or disagree with the following statements about the Irvington Police Department? The Irvington Police Department develops relationships with community members such as residents, organization, and groups. 61%. Okay. Works together with community members to solve local problems. Makes it easy for community members to provide input such as comments, suggestions, complaints, and concerns. 51%. I think that reflects what we have in our recommendations as well to make the complaint process or comment process easier.
And just so you know, I mean, this is just an abbreviated walkthrough of this, but for those that are looking on with the results themselves. There are other answers. In some cases, there's other answers. This summarizes the people that strongly agreed, but obviously there's different breakdowns, different percentages here. So.
What are the most serious policing concerns affecting Irvington? The top one is investigating property crime and robbery. And then the second and third, enforcing traffic laws and enforcing public nuisance laws. Which, if any, of the following roles should the Irvington police play in public schools? Oh. Almost 80% feel build trust between students and police. 72% keep schools safe. And 62% encourage positive attitudes towards the police. And 59% believe assist with drug education. How important is it that the Irvington Police Department make available information on the following? Okay, 74% believe that criminal charges against the department or officers, so that information should be made available on that. 74% also believe that crime statistics should be made available. 65% policing policies and procedures, 58% civil lawsuits against the department or officers, 53 expenditures and policing costs, 52 over 50% believe statistics on police stops by race, gender, and age, 48% hiring policies, and 44% name and rank of officers. It's interesting how it does kind of reflect what the recommendations that have come forward. Which of the following sources do you rely on for information about crime and police activities in Irvington? 61% village notifications, 55% online news websites, 45% social media, and then to a lesser extent, print, 44% print newspapers, 33 school districts notifications. Have you ever filed a complaint about the Irvington Police Department or an Irvington Police Department officer? 98% said no, and 2% said yes.
So now these following questions are for those who had filed a complaint, and what was the experience? So the pool of responses is obviously much smaller.
So that's the 2%.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. How satisfied are you with the result of the complaint process? 46% said very dissatisfied, and 15% said somewhat dissatisfied. So that's 61%. And then in terms of satisfied, 28% were somewhat satisfied or very satisfied.
And this is a perfect example of something that the committee addressed during their recommendations, something regarding the complete process. That's how that ties in.
But it's also statistically, I
Small.
don't know how valid it is because there's only 13 people out of 800.
Yeah, I know that's totally legitimate, absolutely. But this is what
I was saying to Larry, I was surprised 2 people were very satisfied. Usually when you complain about something, you would never get to very satisfied.
Well, you have 5 that are somewhat or very satisfied out of 13.
No.
And I think it's important just to realize also that we're looking at what the structural process was. So what's the interface? How is somebody able to actually interact? And so those are things that are being addressed and things that can be improved. And once that happens, then ideally I think that if we were to do this again in the reasonably near future, we'll have very different results.
In the past, have you decided not to file a complaint about the IPD for any of the following reasons? None of the above. I haven't had any complaints. That was 85% of the people responding. Of the people that didn't file, that wanted to but didn't file a complaint, I worried that I'd have trouble with the police if I filed a complaint. 9% felt that way. Filing a complaint wouldn't solve anything. 6%. I don't know how to file a complaint. 3%. Filing a complaint would be a big effort. 3%. And other, please specify. Because that's what was written in, probably.
So again, to the extent that this is statistically significant, there's a few things to address. So that's helpful.
How many times in the past 5 years have you had contact with a member of the Irvington Police Department? Don't know, nor no answer was 4%. 44% said 5 or more times. 15% said 3 times. 2 times, 13%. 7% says have had no contact. Which types of contact did you have with the Irvington Police Department in the past 5 years? So these are the people that had contact. Okay. Interacted with police casually in the village, 68%. 43% interacted with police at a community or school event. 41% made a non-emergency call to ask for assistance. 35% visited the police department to ask for assistance. 21% was subject to a traffic stop. 18% officers visited my home to investigate a complaint, or 16% made a 911 call to ask for assistance. 14% had other. 2% were subject to a pedestrian stop. Overall, how satisfied are you with your personal experience with the Irvington police officers? 72% said very satisfied, 18% somewhat satisfied, so 90% either were satisfied, and then 7% were somewhat dissatisfied or very dissatisfied.
Can I just add one comment about this question relative to the original question about overall satisfaction with the police department? The reason we put in both is that we wanted, the first one's very general and it's at the beginning of the survey. And the second one is after people have contemplated their personal experiences, and it's really about the officers themselves and their interactions. And this question elicited more positive responses. They were both questions elicited a lot, like very high levels of satisfaction, but this one in particular is a little bit higher. And I think that says something about, about the community officer interactions, and that there is a lot of positivity there. Just wanted to add.
And actually in the beginning, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I want to especially thank Kathy for all her hard work on this. I mean, this is amazing. It really is amazing. So very personally grateful to you. And I'm sure the committee is very grateful for all your work. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
How much do you agree or disagree with the following statements about the Irvington police officers? 82% said arrive on the scene quickly. 76% are concerned for my safety and well-being. 75% treat me with respect. 73 are helpful, are trustworthy, are interested in helping me, demonstrate professionalism, demonstrate honesty and integrity, make me feel comfortable. 63%, at least 63% said show compassion or are fair. And 58% do a good job of explaining their actions and procedures, treat all people equally regardless of their race.
And this is another one of those questions where there's different levels of agreement, and they're all summarized here at the bottom. What
is your gender? So 49% were female and 40% male and 1% other non-binary and 10% prefer not to answer. Are you Hispanic or Latino? 6% said yes, 74% said no, and then 19% said they prefer not to answer.
You might want to skip down to the response rate analysis, because that's where you see how these rates, how these distributions compare with the village population.
Oh yeah, that's what I was wondering.
And that might be more informative for people.
Where is it exactly? I'm sorry.
Right where you are.
Oh, okay.
But we might have to zoom in a bit to see the.
Okay. You want to explain this?
Can you explain it?
Sure. So so we compared the distribution of our survey respondents to the population that was measured between, I guess, estimated by the U.S. Census Bureau over the last few years. And the bottom line is that it's very close. So our survey, the survey respondents are pretty representative, at least demographically, of the village residents. So about 56% female, 45 or so percent male. It's actually pretty uncanny how closely they track each other, except for age. And if you look over at the age distribution, our survey respondents are in the blue bars, and there are substantially more of our survey respondents are 40 and older. And then if you go down to race, which I think people might be interested in seeing, we have a very similar distribution there as well.
Well, people are looking at this. I will just say that if anybody in the audience wants to speak, if you just raise your hand, we'll pause our discussion of this. We're kind of filling the time, but we are really here to listen to whoever's in the audience that has something they'd like to share. But this is kind of we'll do this in the background while we wait to see a hand get raised. So we are looking for hands.
Yeah, and just so you know, I am monitoring hands that are raised, and we just have one.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
Soto? I'm going to take the screen sharing off for now. Okay. Michelle?
Hi.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. So I wanted to share an experience that I have had, actually maybe that my family has had, as well as just my husband. I have never spoken at a forum before. I didn't even answer the survey. Frankly, I haven't felt like it was going to be helpful for me to do so. We clearly are one of the few Hispanic families in Irvington. I am Irish and Puerto Rican. My husband is Puerto Rican. I have a daughter who is going to be 18 next month, who is a senior at Irvington High School, who definitely looks more Irish. And I have another daughter who is brown and looks more like her dad, and definitely looks more Hispanic, and attends Syracuse University. She's actually finishing up her second year there. We had an experience that I initially thought was going to be a positive one. We were having some my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's now at Syracuse, was had a mental health breakdown at the end of her junior year. And we had a really, really difficult time. And we were having a difficult time kind of navigating that situation. And there was an evening where she decided she wasn't coming home. And she called and said, well, I'm just not coming. I packed a bag and I'm staying at a friend's, and wouldn't tell me where she was. And this was very out of character for my daughter. She had never rebelled, and we didn't have any of that. And I had just had it, right? I had been doing it for a little over a month, and I had it. And I spoke to someone, and they said, go to the police department. Go to this police department. They will help you. And they called Tulin, who was my daughter's basketball coach previously. And, I felt like I could trust him. And so I did. I went to the precinct and initially they were very receptive. And I had a conversation and they said, no, you're not crazy. This is not normal. Your daughter shouldn't be behaving this way, and we're going to find her for you. And they did. They went out and they found my daughter. They knocked on doors and they found her. And I was very grateful for that. And then, in the midst of all that, as they were searching for her, me and again, my Irish daughter were kind of at the precinct and hanging out and talking to the very nice police officers. And Tulin was there. And again, we were having a good experience there until my husband arrived. My brown husband, who upon arriving saw two of my daughter's friends sitting in a car and didn't know that they had found my oldest daughter and that she was inside the precinct with us, and went over to the car and said, where is she? I know she's with you guys. Where is she? And after that exchange, when he figured out that she was inside, he walked away and came inside. And one of the girls, if you haven't guessed, a little white girl, short little white girl, walks behind my husband and she follows him into the precinct. And as he approaches the desk and says, I'm here to see my daughter, and he tries to explain, that she had gone missing and we were there. The first thing they said was, where were you? And he said, I was at work. And this was probably midnight, right, on a weeknight. And he said, well, I was at work and I came straight from work. And they said, well, where do you work? And he said, I work at a hotel in the city. And they said, oh, you clean a hotel in the city. So I want to start with that, right? That microaggression, the implication that my husband's a janitor because he's brown. He didn't have on a cleaning uniform. He's not a janitor. Not that it would have made a difference. But again, I digress. We move on from that. He says, no, and the little girl follows him in the station. She opens the door and she starts screaming at my husband. At which time my daughter, at the time who was 15, the Irish one, walks towards the door and tells the girl to leave. She says, this is between my family. This is my family. This is a family matter. Why are you here? You're only making it worse. My sister needs help. And she's pleading with the girl to walk out of the station and leave my family alone. And the girl proceeds to curse at her and, say things that are not true. Like, oh, well, you guys are abusing her and, again, whatever. And so my daughter walks out of the precinct and my husband sees this and thinks that they're going to get into an altercation. And he follows her out. I had no idea what was happening because, again, I was in a room in the back with the other daughter and I heard this commotion and I come out and all I see is police officers who have now jumped on my husband and they're holding him by his neck and they're pulling him back into the precinct. Now, were they trying to prevent a bigger problem? Tulin actually had gone outside to try to break up my daughter and the other girl and stop the argument before it had gotten worse. So Tulin was outside. And now there are officers inside literally on my husband's back. Again, I didn't know what was happening. I pulled my husband back inside. I said, what's going on? And we tried to, kind of gather up what had happened. Tulin went outside to speak to the other family, called the mom of the other girl. It got much bigger than it should have gotten. But in the end, after that whole thing had blown over, what I got from that was, would that same situation have happened if my husband was not brown? Would they have jumped on my husband's neck? Would they have just not gotten in front of him and said, don't worry, we're handling it? Could that have been handled differently? There were several comments made that night, things like, when they're taking my information or his information, where do you live? And the implication of we couldn't possibly own a house in Irvington. There were just several things that were really microaggressions. But the thing that sticks in my head in hindsight is the reaction, was that reaction. This little girl followed my husband in the building. Like, he wasn't outside, he didn't assault her. He wasn't outside screaming at her. He didn't raise his hand to her. He didn't hit her. She followed him in. But yet he was the one that was jumped on. And then what I got after that was, well, there's no reason why he should respond that way. Respond in what way? Respond in a way that was walking out of the building to possibly, make sure his daughter was okay. Would any of us not have done that? So, I wanted to share that experience with you. Someone convinced me to share that experience with you. I wouldn't necessarily have shared it with you because, again, I don't really think that our experiences as Black and Brown community in Irvington, sharing that with people makes a difference. I think you either can relate or you can't. I think you can understand or you can't. Some people want to understand, but most people don't. Again, I'm sharing with you in the hope that there's even one person that might acknowledge that might have been something that we could have handled differently, because that's made my family very uncomfortable. And again, that isn't the only experiences we've had in Irvington with police officers. We've had some positive experiences as well. And I'll say again, especially with Tulin, but we've had other positive experiences with law enforcement in my house because of my daughter's mental health breakdowns. So that wasn't the only experience, but could that experience have been different? I imagine that it would have made my husband feel very different about where he lives, where we chose to live to raise our daughters. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Michelle. I remember that incident very well that night. I believe we still have it on video. I'm not 100% sure if we do, but I remember that night it was very heated all around by everybody. And I also hope you remember when we took everybody into the courtroom and spoke to everybody and how everybody, we felt, was treated fairly, especially, you guys, because of what you guys were going through that night. And I just remember Madison, going, I won't say, that she didn't want to be with us, but she felt safe with us is what I always felt when we brought Madison in. And we had, I thought we had a great rapport. And I remember the incident with your husband and, I remember us actually yelling at the girls more than your husband in the courtroom. I don't know if you were in there. I'm sure your husband was in there. He'll remember that. And obviously it's all subjective what you feel and how you're feeling. And, we never want anybody to feel that way, but we're always here to help you guys.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Tulin, and I was in the courtroom, and it's interesting actually that you say that you felt like we were all treated fairly, because we did all have an opportunity to speak, but the truth is that the other families are the ones that spoke, and when I started to speak, I was quickly shut down. And ushered out of that room. And they said, you know what, you guys said, and I don't know who said it, so I won't point any fingers, but it was, this is getting really heated and we should end it. And that was probably true. But that was probably true before I opened my mouth. So I didn't necessarily
Yeah, and
feel like,
absolutely. I remember that well too. And I remember, in fact, Sergeant Foley sitting behind me, I remember him yelling at one of the girls because of how they were reacting. One of the, as you quoted, the little white girls, as you know, and how they were reacting. And then I remember talking to your husband afterwards. I remember talking to you afterwards. I remember talking to your kids afterwards, both kids. And, you know, like I said, I always hate to feel that you felt something was amiss. I wish you would have came to us right away and said that.
yeah, you know what, Tulin, the truth is that in those situations, and I know this might sound odd to some people, but in those situations, and like you said, everything happened really quickly, right? Like I was in the back with you, with Madison, everything happened really quickly. And I didn't initially say her name because I didn't know that she would want me to do that, but
I apologize.
no, that's okay. But
I just know your kids, so I know.
Yeah, no, I know.
You guys call me Tool, and I call you guys.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I didn't initially come out of the room. Everything did happen really quickly, and I didn't know what had happened, right? So that was my initial reaction was, Pete, back off, let the officers handle this. But again, I do think, I don't think there was a need to jump on my husband's neck. I think we could have had a different response to that. And
can I just chime in here? I'm Sergeant Foley. I was there that night. I don't remember anyone ever jumping on your.
Yeah, well, I
usually wouldn't chime in, but that's an egregious statement.
Excuse me.
It's egregious. I think
excuse me. Excuse me, Officer Tolan. Can we let Miss Soto finish speaking, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I want to add that this is a listening session, and the panelists are really here to listen at this point. And we really want to give the public and the community a chance to express themselves, and a lot of the details, if there are disagreements, they can be hashed out in another forum.
And, and like Tulin said, no, and that's okay. I understand. And I understand that I understand that that's, frustrating. And if you don't remember it that way, that's fine. But what you have to understand is that there were some people outside. Tulin was outside, right? Tulin was trying to break up the girls from getting into a fight. He was, Mackenzie went outside, my daughter went outside, and he thought that they were going to get into a fight. So Tulin was on the outside. Well, I'm telling you that when I came from the back of the building, when I came from out of that room, what I saw was somebody jump on my husband. Now, if Tulin is correct and there's video of it, then that's something that they can check. It's not something that they need to verify with me. I'm just here to tell you that if that is in fact what happened, that could have been handled differently. That is what I'm here to tell you. And that is what I remember happening. And that is what my husband remembers happening. So I'm just here to tell you that. And again, I'm going to repeat this. That is not the only incident that we've had with the police. That is not, we've not had, we've had some positive experiences as well, but that situation could have been handled differently. And I think the fact that we can't say what we're feeling or say what happened without somebody stating, well, that's an egregious statement or that didn't happen, is exactly why people don't go to the police. And then Tulin will just said a minute ago, well, if something happened, I wish you would have told us sooner. Well, the truth is, Tulin, that I didn't think about it sooner. It took me a minute to process all of what happened that night, especially because my daughter was suffering for a year with mental health issues. But the truth of the matter is that even if it had dawned on me 2 days later, the likelihood of me coming to you is slim to none. And exactly for the reason of what just happened. For you guys to say it didn't happen.
We are only supposed to be listening. We are not to be argumentative or defensive. She is to be able to say whatever is on her mind. And if somebody has something to discuss with her afterwards, you take it offline. We are here to listen to what the public has to say. And I apologize to you, Michelle, for the responses that you received just now that I perceive as being very negative.
Ms. Soto, this is supposed to be a listening session, and I do appreciate you coming and sharing what your observations are. And just absolutely for clarification, it should be only to listen. So at this point, we did allow a little bit of give and take, and it seemed that I thought that it was positive earlier with Officer Tulin, and we won't do that going forward. So
I just want to apologize as well.
We apologize.
I thought I stepped out of the room. I came back in while this discussion was going on. I thought it was a discussion of the incident. I thought there was back and forth going. So that's where I interjected. I shouldn't have said anything. I apologize. And, you know,
We apologize.
I won't say another word.
Ms. Soto, I do want to make it clear that we are very appreciative of you taking the time and having the courage to share the story, which I know cannot have been an easy story for you to share. And I find it to be extremely valuable. And there's no judgment with respect to whether it's honest, truth, or anything else. I have no reason to believe that you're not here to share your perspective. And that's the type of perspective that allows us to be successful going forward. So thank you very much, ma'am. And if you have anything else you'd like to continue to share, please do so.
Thank you. No, I'm done sharing, but thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
While we're waiting, I just wanted to outline a little bit of the next steps, the timing. Maybe not with exact dates, but at least some rough idea. So this report needs to be prepared and really finalized sometime next week. Board of Trustees is planning on holding a meeting towards the end of March. It could be as early as March 25th. It could be as late as the 31st, of course. But those are the dates that they're talking about in terms of a special meeting. So the report needs to be delivered by then. So that's going to incorporate, you know, any comments you hear from these forums, any other comments the committee receives. We'll be summarizing the voting on each of the recommendations by the committee, by individual committee members, as well as adding in, you know, other information into the report. So there's a lot to do.
Larry, would you mind giving us an update, if no one from the public is commenting right now, on how how many votes you've gotten in and how many you're waiting for still?
Let me look. I actually didn't go through that today. I probably should have. But I'll look quickly. I know it definitely wasn't full participation as of over the weekend, but let me check now.
And Larry, what determines whether it's going to be the 25th or the 31st? Is it whether the report's done?
Well, that would be a part of it, but the you know, the board's trying to juggle their schedule to get an extra meeting in before April 1st. Because they don't have a regularly scheduled meeting between now and April 1st. So they're prepared to schedule a special meeting. It's just we don't know the date yet.
Okay.
So it looks like it's pretty full. Obviously have to match up names and, you know, who, and make sure there's no inactive members here, but it looks like we've received 22 votes, which is probably about right. Maybe short a few. So I'll go through and and check, but we're definitely much closer now.
Ayo, I wondered for the county, has the county approved all of the county's recommendations?
Yes, the county approved all of the recommendations. And we had our final public comment session last week.
And is there any movement on the police accountability committee? Is that, I forget what it was, the technical word.
There was a lot of support for that in the public comment. And it's being worked on now and considered by the County Board of Legislators. So I would tend to think that it will move forward. It's just putting the framework together, so that's going to take a decent amount of time. But there have been some proposals that have been set forth already.
And do you know if, I know that this is a state question. I know that the Senate and the Assembly both passed their respective proposed budgets. Do you know if there was any money included in both of those budgets to fund criminal justice improvements?
I'm sure that well, I don't know specifically, but I would imagine that there were. Whether it's going to be sufficient to be able to address all of the proposed changes is another story. And some of the, if I'm not mistaken, some of the changes already have not, well, some of the proposals at least, do not provide for state funding. So for instance, there was a proposal with respect to changing compensation for court-appointed attorneys. And so one of the at least proposals does not include state funding, but I'm sure that that will be subject to change.
So Larry, then after tonight, where, I'm going to say where, putting it in the plural, we're going to be working to finalize the report. But is the committee going to meet again before the report is submitted to the Board of Trustees, or there really isn't a need for that? Or
No, I think the committee needs to meet probably next week, and I'm not sure of the date. It'll either be Monday or Wednesday, most likely. Wednesday is probably the logical date because there needs to be, things need to be written at this point. You know, introductions and background, and so, some of that was drafted as part of the survey report. I saw that Kathy drafted that, but I think there's still additional information that needs to be put in. Mayo, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's, you know, there's other sections that are somewhat meaty that need to be added.
There are, yes, but ideally it won't take that long.
So we're not meeting tomorrow night?
I don't think we had settled that. So that's up to you all.
I thought we had a meeting for the entire group from 2 to 4 tomorrow, but maybe that's wrong. Maybe that was canceled.
I mean, it was all kind of, that was all drafted out very early on. I think we're trying to fine tune it now to fit where we are exactly. So, but it's, you know, it's up to you. I just think we need to get some more words on paper, and someone's got to do that. So
I thought tomorrow's meeting was canceled because of St. Patty's Day. I think
Right.
that was the discussion.
Okay.
yeah, well, and that's part of the reason why we didn't schedule this meeting tomorrow night.
Right.
So most likely, just in terms of the work that needs to get done, I would think it would be more likely that it would be done by the 24th. So do you think we should, or should we reserve the Monday night, the 22nd, and then also the 24th, or just the 24th from 2 to 4?
I can't do the 22nd, but I could do the 24th.
Yeah.
The 22nd was planned, right? That one I have down as one that has been scheduled.
Those meetings were on there just as a matter of
Placeholders.
of routine. You know what I'm saying? I don't think I think we're just trying to decide. I think the committee needs one more meeting to really have a chance to look over what will be ultimately the final report. And because some of that hasn't been written yet, we need time between now and that meeting, and we need some people to divvy up what has to be done. So my suggestion is to do the 24th, because I think the trustees are ready to meet as early as the 25th to try to approve this. I realize that won't give them a lot of time, but you know, they'll have drafts in their hands, and they've seen the recommendations, which is really where the meat is, of course. But that's where we are. Mayo, do you think one of the comments is that not from the public, from another committee member, is to kind of discuss what areas need to be written or addressed as part of the full report? I mean, we have the recommendations. We will have, you know, the more complete survey results, as complete as we can get. We have the internal police survey report, which will be in there. But what other areas do you think need to be addressed?
Well, we're going to need an introduction. We'll have a body that will describe the village and describe the department, and we'll describe things simply such as demographics. We'll talk a bit about the process, and it's not going to take that much time to get that accomplished. Then we'll have conclusions. There'll be some areas where we'll describe some of the particular disciplines a bit more. We'll flesh that out. Other than that, I think that's time that probably is better spent than us having a meeting at this time. I think that once we have the draft, then we should have the meeting. So perhaps the 24th would be a decent day for the meeting. The 22nd, I think, would not be a good day to do that. I don't think I think that a lot of that work is done. It's simply formatting it and working on the actual language.
You know, people have asked, and I in emails, people have asked about the police survey, of how that is going to be, what the committee is going to do, or the IPG will do with the police survey. I don't know if there's a plan.
We have a comment if you want to take a quick pause on that. Hold on one second. Okay.
Giuseppe?
Yep.
Yes, hello.
Yes. You're on.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Evening.
So I was looking over the draft report that you guys had, and some of the things that I was looking at pertaining to recruitment. I see that there was some issues with the rule of three being in place. I've taken plenty of civil service exams over my lifetime in looking for a career in civil service, and I do know that the rule of three was put in place to prevent nepotism and to protect the integrity of civil service exam takers to be selected based on their qualifications rather than on who they know to get the job. In the past, there's been liability issues that have resulted in class action suits for improper hiring practices. So most of these test takers usually want an entry level in law enforcement. Now, I know from personal experience, when you enter into law enforcement, initially, these entry level law enforcement officers seek excitement and action. So hence focusing on changing testing to promote diversity may not be achievable because the Irvington PD may not fulfill the mindset of an entry level applicant. I'm not sure if the committee has considered hiring lateral seasoned officers for a slower paced department midway through their career. And I know that could pose a problem because smaller departments may not react well to poaching their officers. But it could be achieved with bigger departments like the NYPD, state police officers, other departments that qualify for lateral movement. I know that's a growing concern, but addressing it may pose a higher class action suits in reference to eliminating the rule of three to protect the exam takers that were put in place. I know that there was talk of potentially getting a community policing or an auxiliary police. I know that there's liabilities of putting people out on the street like that. It's not that type of town that we live in, where you're in the NYPD and there could be some assignments that you can give a community policing or an auxiliary police department. One of the questions that I did have, those were just some highlights that I saw from the draft complaint. One of the questions that I did have was the creation of a civilian complaint review process. If you guys can please explain to me how an independent body could achieve subpoena power. I'm not sure what legal ramifications would be used to establish such a committee or a civilian complaint review to establish subpoena powers. And please explain how that would be acquired, because that's interesting and that's a judicial process that an administrative body would be very challenged to know the intricacies of drafting subpoenas.
Mr. Interlandi, this is Mayo Bartlett. And again, this is a listening session, so we appreciate your comments and your questions. It's not a give and take. It's not an exchange where we would answer questions, but we will note your questions and we certainly will note your comments, and we're appreciative of them.
Thank you.
Do you have any additional comments, sir, or questions?
Yeah, well, one of the other questions I had is, I mean, it seems like the survey highlights a very positive outlook of the police department. We do have a diverse family, although I'm not Hispanic. My wife is Hispanic. My children speak Spanish. We're a Spanish-speaking family. We've had nothing but positive interactions in the community. And the police officers have been extremely courteous. Detective Tulin, his wife has been extreme help to my older son when he was in a nursery school at Dells Lane prior to entering kindergarten. And we value the relationships that the police department have with the community. Unfortunately, there are times where other people have different experiences. Just want to highlight that we all see the world through our own lens, and addressing concerns is definitely very, very important. But please understand that some of these police officers come into something with high level of training and react to situations as deemed fit. There may be some negative interactions, and that's par for the course when there's a very interesting dynamic if it's encountered. I'll leave it at that. But I do know that this is a very vulnerable time in our country, and I do hope that the committee has the right agenda moving forward in evaluating police practices and not cloud their minds with some of the negative encounters other communities have outside of Irvington.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Brian, it's time to start a sing-along.
One of the suggestions in the chat room was to maybe use the time to divvy up the work. I don't have my outline in front of me, but I heard Mayo say that he feels we need an introduction, a description of the process, conclusion.
Yes, we do. I think that a lot of that probably has, I believe that's been started, but Larry, I'm not sure how far along we are in terms of the introduction.
Yeah, so some of that was started, but then I did see, and Kathy I didn't read the whole thing, to be honest with you, but I know Kathy wrote some things at the beginning of the survey. And so some of that will take the place of what I wrote, or it can be incorporated, or, I mean, it looks pretty useful. So, so thank you for that. But was that intended to, I know that introduces the survey, but I don't know if that was intended to be, kind of part of the whole report. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm glad you have some like powers of self-preservation left, that you didn't read it. That's good, very good to hear. It's kind of meant to be generic, and if it can serve somewhere else, that's fine. It was just to provide a little context about the executive order, and I bet you that I understated the extent to which the board of trustees, and Brian can weigh in, had already been working or thinking about a kind of reexamination in advance of things. And I know Brian's said it a bunch of times. So yeah, it just was to provide context, and if you can plug it in and if it's helpful, great. So
yeah, so it's been started, but it certainly needs a little bit of work. Not what you wrote, what I wrote. So I wasn't critiquing your work.
No, mine's not exactly poetry either. It's just, getting it down.
Much of what you wrote is what we're talking about. So that's the type of information that we would include. Thank you.
I mean, if there is something, I kind of hesitate to get into this discussion, just because if anybody from the public would want to chime in, it would be, I wouldn't want them to feel like they're preempting our administrative conversation. But if there is something, a few large chunks that are missing, it might be good to just, identify them. And we don't have to do it right now, but get them out to everybody ASAP, so that people can think about whether they, are interested and able to put those on paper. So that's all.
Thank you.
Now we can begin the sing-along. But John, you have to start. Don't just Well, maybe I should propose that after this is all over, we all go together on a yoga retreat. I hate yoga personally, but I would be willing to make that sacrifice.
No, I'd rather go for Eileen's party.
Yeah, we already agreed on that. Sorry. There's a comment. Hold on one second. Karen?
Okay, thank you. I hadn't planned to say anything about this because I recognize what the actual purpose of this hearing is, but especially after that story that was told earlier that saddened us all, I'm sure, I wanted to say something else because I have had the experience of an officer here in Irvington who was very concerned about a resident who he recognized was suffering from dementia. And I think all of us who knew this person knew that he was suffering from dementia. And I'm sorry to say I had refused him a number of times when he had asked me for a ride, and I gave him an excuse. And I'm sorry to say that, but I just didn't feel fair. I didn't feel safe having him in my car. But in any case, this officer had not only bought clothes for this person, but he approached me because he knew that I served on an advisory committee at Phelps for senior programs. And so he wanted to connect this person with somebody at Phelps. And I had to explain that the event that he wanted to connect him was really a social event, and it wasn't an appropriate setting. Well, obviously, he was trying to find a way to get help for this person suffering from dementia. And finally, someone who was a trained professional kind of called him off, the officer, I mean. So I don't know what happened. The person who was suffering is no longer in this community. So obviously, I think other arrangements were made. But I only brought this up because I feel that in the many years I've been here, I've always experienced a personal caring with the officers on our police force and everyone involved in the welfare of individuals here in the community. And I felt that this was an example of that. And I have had occasions myself. I live alone, and I called the police department one night because I thought I smelled smoke, and I was very concerned that there might be a fire someplace in the building. And I knew that they wouldn't laugh at just an old lady who was perhaps smelling something that wasn't there. But anyway, an officer came, and of course he checked out and didn't find anything. But I am mentioning it because I feel our police department, for whatever other problems there have been or weaknesses, they have always been personally responsible and have always been supportive of everyone I know. So I simply had to mention that because I know others have had other experiences, but I've lived here for 50 years and I have always found our police department to be supportive and caring, and that's the important thing that I have found.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry to bring it up again, but it's the intro, the conclusion, and what else do we need to finish this thing up?
The
But I'm gonna,
process, sorry.
go ahead, please.
No, I was actually gonna ask you, Mayor, what you meant by the process. Did you mean like there were 2 subcommittees and we met X number of times and these were the topics? Like what the exact process was that we went through?
To give an overview of the work that was done, and also to structure it so that we have it in the order, in the format that we'd like to have it in as well. And so perhaps we may want to schedule a time to meet. And I don't know if the 22nd is a good day to do that. We can do that, or we can do it before, just to go over everything and to make sure that everything is where we'd like for it to be. And then we can schedule I guess we have the additional meeting on the 24th.
I would think it would have to be sooner than, because it has to be written than the 22nd.
I have, without putting it up on the screen, obviously this isn't the appropriate forum, but just to let you know, I have a background section which anyone is welcome to take a look at. It's on the shared drive. It outlines, you know, where the order came from. It outlines the committee structure, how the subcommittees were formed, what they addressed, and then, you know, gets into the meetings that were held, the full meetings of the full committee, the special meetings that we had, like the ABLE presentation, and just outlines, you know, the number of subcommittee meetings that took place, and then as well as these public forums. And that's summarized over the course of whatever, 3 pages or something. It probably needs to be cleaned up, but it's, the main structure is really there. And like I said, anyone's welcome to look at it, add to it, change it, whatever. You know, there's a lot of little blanks to be filled in.
Where is that, Larry?
It's in the shared drive, and there's a folder in there called report. And in there, there's a folder for final report, you know, just to segregate it a little bit, because there's a bunch of different work products that we've had. And so there's a background section, and there's also an introduction, which probably needs a little bit more embellishment. That structure should take care of the bulk of the beginning of this. I think what needs to happen is there needs to be some sort of a tie-in or lead-in to the recommendations. And you know, I don't know how to do that. And then, or at least I haven't thought about it yet. And then there's going to be appendices worth of information, I imagine, you know, just raw information, wherever that might be.
What I suppose is if you'd like, we can try to schedule a meeting. I'm available Friday evening, Friday afternoon. I don't know if that works for anyone, but I'd say Friday from 2:30 on. Okay, I can also make myself available over the weekend to some degree. My morning on Saturday is somewhat booked, but I have some flexibility on Sunday and later on Saturday. And then we can also, I have availability on the 22nd. I don't think we probably would have to go beyond that period of time.
No, I think honestly, really for the meeting would be for anyone that has the time and is willing to do some writing or editing or,
yeah.
And it probably should happen sooner rather than later. So even though Friday is not a fun day for a meeting, but it'll give the weekend for someone to actually work on it or people to work on it. So, and really when that weekend's over, you know, there's only a few more days left next week before the report's got to be finalized. So I think if anyone's willing to get together Friday afternoon, who would have the time and interest in doing it, I think that would be helpful.
Well, the major part of our effort is done, right? I mean, that once you finish tabulating the votes.
Yeah, those will just be real simple notations next to each recommendation, indicating the vote of the support of the committee. So that's not that, I mean, I'm going to do that. That's pretty straightforward. But it's just all the rest of the stuff and tying it all together.
So what we have, when we have the recommendations, we have those in raw form. So what we'd be doing is adding some context to that information and organizing it so that when someone looks at it, it's, the ability to read it is improved. And then we'll also have a paragraph or two describing each area. And a lot of that's done already, but we'll tie it together, and it shouldn't, I don't expect that it's going to take that long. But if we have a few people who'd like to, I can also be available on Thursday. I'd say probably from 5 to 6:30.
So just to clarify what you're saying, Mayo, in terms of the recommendations, so the background that's already there, sort of appended to the recommendations, is that not sufficient as far as you see?
In some cases, yes. In other cases, I would give a little more information. We may want to just polish it a little bit so that it's easier for someone to read it. But I don't think that that's going to take a lot. I mean, from my review of it, I think that really we probably won't take that long to be able to accomplish that component of it.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern is that, like, if we, that since people have already voted on them, and they voted on them based on the context that was in there. So I want, so yeah, I could see like streamlining it so that it flows better and so that it's easier for people to find their way around and create a sort of table of contents to that. Anyway, I'm happy to pitch in. I kind of have exhausted the time I have, but I don't want to leave anybody alone.
Oh, no, I'm available at 3:30 Friday, and I could go straight. Like I could go 3:30 to whatever.
To midnight.
Yes, I could.
I think my family might be a little frustrated if I do the Friday night thing. But yeah, please, I'm available most of the times that we've discussed, and so assume that I would be happy to pitch in and help. And it would be kind of nice if we had somebody, some people who haven't done much of the writing yet, just to get different people and different voices involved as well.
One of the things that sometimes that's a hurdle, because then when someone's reading it, they're reading different voices. So we want to, what I would propose at least, is that we have some consistency in language, that we keep the intent exactly as it is. And just as by way of example, what we did in the county is we took 51 recommendations, and the 51 recommendations became 179 pages. So, we didn't minimize the results or the report or anything that was there. If anything, we fleshed it out a little bit more, just so that we gave more background and talked about, let's say, if we get into qualifications and recruitment, why that's important, without talking about the actual recommendations themselves. I don't envision this being a 100+ page report. I don't think it needs to be. I think that we certainly will add content that will show that this is the unique report from Irvington, and that'll capture why it's the unique report from Irvington. It absolutely would not change what was the intent of the group. So the language, and we'll be very, very well aware that specific language was chosen. And, this is not an opportunity for us to come in and now change that language, because we know that people spent many days and weeks and months choosing that, and sometimes over one particular word, which has unique meaning. So we would not change that. What we would do is sort of highlight the process, highlight what we did, highlight the conversations, not in detail, but the fact that we had very open and honest conversations, that we had some significant disagreements, and I tend to think more often than not a lot of agreement, and what we think we should be doing going forward and why we think we should be doing it, as opposed to just listing a set of recommendations. So I think that the paragraphs that we would be adding, I don't expect are going to take a tremendous amount of time. Then we're going to have to do a word by word, review just to make sure that we are referring to things in a consistent manner, so that we don't have different acronyms for the same thing, that we are consistent, so that someone who's reading it wouldn't know necessarily that it was, collaborative effort of 50 or of whatever we are, 20 people who participated in it. And I guess probably 6 or 7 who participated in drafting the language, drafting the recommendation.
Maybe what would be helpful, Mayo, and I don't mean to give you more work, but maybe if you circle or highlight the topics that you think need a little more background information, and then maybe we can circulate to people who are willing to provide that background information. And then when we meet on Friday, we could bring it back together.
I just disagree a little bit, just having gone through the process, that then it's just going to lead to more editing.
Oh, okay.
Because we're going to, everybody writes in their own style. And so it's probably better if we have a small group of people that are interested. I don't see us needing really much more than an hour or so at a time. And we ought to be able to really tighten it up and have it where we want it to be.
Okay, should everybody review it ahead of time and come with?
Once we finish it, we should be able to have a completed draft that will circulate to everyone. And then we'll give everybody an opportunity to make any additional comments or observations. And then we should ideally have the report together by, I'd say certainly by the 24th, 25th at the latest, if not sooner.
I like Larry's timeline of the 24th for us, 25th for the trustees, and get it done before April Fool's Day.
Well, it's got to be submitted by then. So I expect that we should have it done. Really, there's no reason why we can't, for the most part, have it finished by the weekend, by the end of the weekend. But I'd say by Monday the 22nd, I would think we should be able to have it together.
So just as a reminder, anyone that's attending this forum, if you have any comments, either any comments at all relating to the policing, just raise your hand here in the forum.
Please. I've heard Thursday, Friday, and Saturday mentioned. How are we going to figure out when and how long?
Well, I would plan to work on each of those dates, and whoever is interested or able to come and join, then I'll tell you when I'm available. Sometimes I'm going to have to leave, but you can continue to work if I have to step away. So I would propose that on Thursday, let's say 5 o'clock, and I just have from 5 until about 6:45. There's a chance that we'd be able to resolve the vast majority of it at that time. And then I'd say again Friday at 2:30, and I can go from 2:30 until we finish it, really. And then if we need to do something over the weekend, we can. And if we needed to do something on Monday, we'd be able to do it on Monday as well.
Sorry, Mayo, can you repeat the time on Thursday that you mentioned?
Right, it was
absolutely sure. Thursday, I think I said at 5 o'clock.
5 to 6:45, you said.
Right. And everyone's free to work beyond that. I have a court appearance at 7, but that won't last that long, so I could come back.
And then Friday at 2:30?
Yeah.
I'm sorry? I think
Friday at 2:30?
Yeah, Friday at 2:30.
Friday at 2:30, yes.
And like I've done before, I'll try to tee up as much as I can before that, so it's productive.
I'm sorry, can you repeat those dates again? So it's this Thursday, the 18th, from 5:30 or 2:30? What was that?
I'll say 5 p.m. and we can go as long as we want to. I just have to drop off at 6:45. I should be back no later than 7, I'd say 7:15.
Okay, so not 2:30.
No, Thursday, I'm sorry. Thursday's at 5 o'clock.
And then when is it?
Friday at 2:30, okay.
Okay. So can somebody send around these dates?
I'm doing it right now.
So maybe
Oh, no.
the other people like me might not be clear on
I
them.
made a mistake, sorry, the 18th. Sorry, I made a mistake. All right, let me do it.
And to the degree that, and I hate to ask this because I know that you put in so much time, but to the degree that the people who have worked on the draft thus far are available, that would be wonderful if you can. And if you can't, it's okay. And I only say that just because you've already gone through everything and you have all of the information. And it's largely your language to begin with. So we can just make sure that it flows somewhat consistently, although I don't think it's going to be, it's not going to be something we can't do if you're not able to make it.
Mayor, what time did you say until on Friday? I know starting at 2:30.
I intend to do Friday until we're finished, really, but I mean, I wouldn't ask that of everybody else because that's not right. So what I would do is, my proposal would be instead that I'm available to do that. We had an 8-hour session with the county and we went from 6 o'clock to 2:30 in the morning. And I would never suggest that to anyone. But I do think we could go if we needed to till 8 o'clock, maybe 9 o'clock. But I don't think we're going to need to do that. I think that we'll have a good idea of exactly where we are. We'll be able to look at where we are, what we need to do, and maybe even divvy up some paragraphs here or there. But I tend to think that once we agree on what we want to say, we can draft the language and then we can, reconvene to go over it to make sure we're not missing anything. And that'll give us enough time. I think that if we're fortunate enough, we'll have everything done by the 22nd or before, where we'd be able to get it to the board in advance, just to give an extra a little more time for them to review it.
Well, thanks for pulling together those dates, and I will certainly make myself available. Although I don't know about the the late night session that Mayo's considering. I think my family would pretty much lock me out of the house at this point.
I think realistically, Kath, if we started on the 19th and we start at 2:30, I think we should really be done by 6:30 or 7 o'clock at the latest. I don't see
so
it's
too.
going to be 4 hours for us to get that done in addition to whatever we do on Thursday.
The time pressure will be helpful, I think.
Yeah, I think we'll be fine. I think we'll have everything together. Ideally, we'll be able to get a draft of the completed report out, maybe even over the weekend. I don't want to be too optimistic, but I certainly don't see why it would take, why we couldn't be able to do that by Monday.
Mayo, I think we're going to do an hour and a half each day and be done with it.
I think we could do that. I also think that the report itself is going to be, I expect at least it to be a really very good report. It's not going to be, a million pages, but I don't think they need to be. I think that the content itself is going to be really very solid. And I think it'll allow us to, it'll be an easier read in many respects, but I think when you look for the substance, it'll be there. And Kathy, I guess we also, one of the things that we'll look at is how to include and how to fit the survey in.
Yeah, the way the report was written is it's intended to just be kind of modular so that you can put it in as an appendix or something.
We could do that, or you could include it as a part of the body of the report. Different municipalities have done it different ways. Some municipalities, the majority of the report is the actual survey, and I wouldn't do that. I don't think that, well, I think we have enough other things that wouldn't be the case. So I think that sometimes they had very few recommendations, but they had a survey that was the majority of what they did. So I think we'll have enough substantive information in addition to the survey.
It's a little bit too bad that, that we didn't have the survey data available just, right before the recommendations, although I think they jibe pretty well together, and the survey findings and the recommendations are pretty consistent, but it would be nice if there were a little bit more of a relationship there, but that's how it is. We did a lot in a short time. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Kathy, I had a question for you as it relates to the survey. So one of the things that is being prepared is kind of an executive summary of it, or is that not what your intention is? I just want to understand. It was, right? No, it's evolved.
It was my intention. I think as recently as like last night.
Right.
But so other components ended up taking longer than I expected, which is pretty typical for me. So I had thought we would do one, and we still can, but it was intended. My thought was that whatever it was in the executive summary should be pretty descriptive and not interpretive. So it wouldn't be terribly different from maybe what many people take away from looking at the charts and tables. So I don't know. What do you? It's not written.
I only
Yeah.
brought it up because I'm just thinking of the structure of how to include it, because if there's an executive summary, you can include the executive summary as part of the body of the report, and then just include the tables as an appendix. If that's not happening, which is fine, then you probably just put the entire document as an appendix and just refer to it in the body. That probably makes the most sense.
One thing that I'm curious about, because I kind of like look at data all the time. It's like my language. But I'm wondering, for most people, do they feel like it's kind of self-evident what the charts and tables show, or do they feel like they would like some just not necessarily in this case, but just generally speaking, do they prefer some kind of text interpretation or text description?
I think the way it is right now is fine, especially because one of our recommendations is to have continuing surveys in the future. So this one would serve as the baseline to see if there's any change going forward, especially with the recommendations we're making.
So no one thinks that they would prefer some kind of like text interpretation to find the information more meaningful.
I think that it's very clear.
Okay.
I think in relation to the amount of work that would be, I don't think there's a huge amount of gain for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, anything like that would be nice to have, but it's also a lot of work. So I'm not sure it's necessarily worth it.
Okay. Sounds good.
I do think that if it's incorporated into the body of the report, we should also have it as an appendix.
What do you mean by that, Kay? In both places? No.
Well, when it's in the report, it's only going to be piecemeal. And if somebody wanted to look at the entire thing, I mean, how many pages is the entire thing?
30, I think.
Oh, all right. Well, more than I thought.
Yeah, I wondered if what Kay was saying was, and I don't know if we want to do this, but where the survey bears out the recommendation that we're making. I know for one of the recommendations, I don't remember which one it was, but for one of the recommendations, there is some commentary that says, as this was also borne out in the survey.
Oh, that's true, because I referenced it because I happened to have been looking at it that day. It might have been about the complaint process. So you're right that we could refer to specific items, when it's relevant.
Well, I guess that's what I was asking, if
Yeah.
we want to if we want to, because Kay was asking and then saying if we put it into the body that way, then we should put the whole survey at the back. But
Well, again, we can discuss that and look at how we want to actually use the survey. We may want to take parts of the survey and include it in the report, and some parts we may want to also have it for the full report and have it as an appendix.
Yeah, I think we can reference, one nice thing about creating a good table of contents is that you can actually hyperlink back and forth, between like a reference to the complaint process, and that chart, so that people can actually click and go to the chart that you're referring to and then go back.
wow,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful in a document that large, so we can say, oh well, this was suggestive, or this issue that emerged from the survey speaks to this, and then you can say, see chart B, and the person can actually click on it, have it hyperlinked, and they can go to the end immediately and look at it and then come back. So
Except you're actually doing it backwards because the survey results came out after we already made that determination. So you can use that as evidence that the committee was thinking the way the public was.
yeah, it's all true. I completely agree with you, John. It's like, you're right, and I think there are some interesting things in the survey that, are kind of surprising, but generally speaking, they're not like shocking, So yeah, you're right. It's like it came out of the survey because it was on there. And the thing that we haven't done that really might yield some interesting surprises is we haven't analyzed the open-ended parts and just the other, where people wrote in another answer. So that's where you kind of get stuff where you really learn more. And I think that'll be.
You could spend years analyzing that survey. I mean, some of those questions, if you look at it, the number of responses that give you interesting statistics are tremendously lower than the total number of surveys. So is it a valid statistic when it's that much fewer?
Yeah, I think where you get to the items where only some people answer, then it's then you're really not treating it like statistical data. It's more qualitative. Although when you do look, you do see some pretty large numbers even in those filtered categories and those filtered answers. Because we did have such a high response rate overall, you still get some, a large number of people, significant numbers of people saying things, and they're all statistically significant. But anyway, yeah, we have 2,500 open-ended responses, not including the other specified.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a lot.
Are you going to even try to put that into the report, or just leave that out for now and just go with what's there?
I haven't even looked at them because I felt like an independent person should do that.
And I think we had a discussion at one point. I think there was emails that went around, but essentially that the committee needs to acknowledge that and recommend that those responses be reviewed and analyzed after this report, because there just physically isn't enough time to do it and do it thoughtfully. So one of the recommendations of the committee is to recommend just that. We're not going to lose.
Did we add that as a recommendation?
I don't think so. I think that becomes part of the text that we have to embellish a bit. So it's not a formal recommendation, but that's kind of the way we talk about it.
Because we did recommend that the committee continues past this and that the surveys continue going forward. So you're right, Larry, just adding a couple of words, you can do all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really all we can do at this point. I mean, we all know that. Just hearing that 2,500 number is ridiculous to even think about. So in terms of coding and all that.
Great that you get that 2,500 number. You know, that takes a lot more time to do. And
yeah.
So
He'll do it.
It's a better idea.
And it'll be very helpful to analyze. It just won't be done by April 1st, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
When do you want the group to vote on that or to make the recommendation?
I don't know that it's necessarily needs to be a formal recommendation. It's going to be part of the text, like John just referred to. It'll be part of the text of the report. But let's see how it develops. I mean, I don't know what the options are, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it would be a shame, I think.
I mean, I think at a minimum, you should at least mention that they exist.
I think it's important to have a tentative date for when that will be done, so it's not left open-ended.
That's going to be, it's going to take a long time to do it. So I don't know that we can even necessarily have a date. And we'd have to also go through the process of determining who's going to do it. I think that my suggestion would be at least that we indicate that at the time of the report, of the draft of the writing of the report, that we had not yet had an opportunity to complete a review of the responses.
I think having even a tentative date, because all of the people who took the time to write in, I think will want to know what's going to happen with what they wrote. Is it just going to be nothing has happened? What if a tentative date of 6 months was put in, and if we weren't able to meet that we would put out a notice saying that, it isn't done by this time, but we expect it to be done by X time.
Well, I think that you're hamstringing the mayor and the board, since they're the ones that are going to vote on these things ultimately. So now you're telling them they have to do it. I think that let them vote on it and then let them come up with the tentative date.
Okay. I just want to respect the fact that the people who did write in, that whatever they wrote in is going to be taken into consideration.
But we also have to respect our local government.
Yes.
I will publicly commit that we will go through every one of those comments and ensure that they're read and valued.
Okay.
Kathy, I wondered, it was interesting that, well, it seems like I didn't know there's more women in Irvington than men. I don't know what the statistic was. Is it how many more women percentage wise?
Actually, that's true demographically. Everywhere in every circumstance, it's an interesting demographic phenomenon that for a variety of reasons. I don't know. I actually didn't look closely at the Irvington one. I can take a quick look now, but the female population is typically larger than male because women have higher survival rates at every age.
Right,
That
but
and the
sorry, is that, because it was a higher percentage though of women who completed the form in Irvington than the percentage in the population. So I just wondered, is that usual that in completing surveys that women complete surveys more than men?
So the population of Irvington is 56% female.
Oh.
And the survey response is 55% female.
Oh, it's almost perfect.
Yeah. So it's very, very close. It's shockingly close.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and there are studies about it. It used to be, I think the survey responses have changed, but there used to be a lot of studies, and it was always older people who were more likely to complete them, and women were more likely to. And but I think a bunch of those things have changed with the way surveys are administered now through online and with technology. So I don't know that those are continue to hold. Yeah.
And what's the average age for Irvington? Do you have that there?
I don't have the average age. I mean, I do actually could look it up for you, because we used age categories, so I couldn't actually calculate an average respondent age. So I didn't try to compare. I didn't take a look at the average. No. Sort of hard to find meaning in an average, because nobody is the average.
I just wonder if there's many children or those younger in Irvington or older people.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's true. So what I did actually doesn't really help us to understand that, because I was just trying to make sure that our survey respondent pool was representative. So, and we didn't survey people under 14.
Right.
So I didn't really look at that for the purpose of this. I'm not sure.
The population of Irvington is aging because the school population is decreasing.
We're due for another baby boomlet.
Pandemic boom.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't look at that.
I think with the pandemic, people are having less children. I think I just saw that recently.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
Yeah.
I have to say I was disappointed that we didn't have more young people respond to the survey, just because I'm very anxious to have like young people participating in a lot of village governance, and I think it would be good, but it wasn't to be. So
Chief, I like that flyer that went out about the test coming up.
Oh,
Have you had any responses?
Yeah, thank you. We also hosted a couple Q&A sessions in the courtroom yesterday, and we had just a handful of people come in that are interested in taking the test. So a few people that were able to sign up, a few people that didn't qualify, but we're still trying to spread the word. So if you know anybody, or we have flyers, and the village is also going to help offer a prep course for people that are interested in taking a prep course for the test, try to get some better grades. So we've been just trying to push the information out, and hopefully we could get a good candidate pool going.
Now, Vernon was in the paper about that today as one of their suggestions, but you guys have done it. But I congratulate you.
It was a big group effort, so
So should something like that be put in the report? Like efforts have already been begun. Should there be something like that? Should that be put in? Because that's a perfect example, I think.
That's a good point. If there are things that we've come up, any suggestions that the committee has that the department has started to implement, we should make sure we note that.
Like the website, the pictures online, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
All of that is all, I think some of that's already in there.
Yeah.
The updates to the website in there.
Yeah.
So maybe just not this last thing. This-
I couldn't hear you. Could you say that again, Arlene, please?
I think the change to the updates to the website, that was, I think that was in the report. I actually think that was in the section, but, I think that's all included, the
Beautiful.
things that were done. And then I think we probably should add this, right? Because I think it ties. in the section.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
So Chief, could you send something like, just say what, like the forums and, like a paragraph or something?
Sure, we could have something put together and send it to you.
Great.
So Larry, will you set up a link for Thursday and Friday?
Yeah, I'll set all that up and circulate it around.
Okay, and if we need to do something on Saturday, I can set a link up as well. So I just.
Either way, yeah.
Okay.
Fine.
Thank you.
Five-minute warning.
4-minute warning.
Talking about Eastern time, Larry.
Exactly. I'm back in the East.
Just be glad you're not in Colorado.
Oh, is there snow there? Yeah. No.
Right?
No, thanks.
Did everybody do their bracket?
Question is, will all the teams make it through the playoffs, even if they win?
All things a mess.
I think today was the last day they could replace a team, right? 4 teams on standby, which is bizarre.
I think the question is anybody on a roster?
What's that?
So we got a big game coming up. Who can get us all tickets to the Knicks and Nets?
Game from last night. That one I can't get tickets for that
The
one.
next one we have.
Oh, the next one. The Knicks are actually beating Philly right now. It's pretty tough back to back. First and second teams in the conference.
Well, that's because Embiid was out.
This is about when we started talking again last time and we ran over. Chief Cerrone can catch the 9:20 train to the city now. Go out tonight.
I am so glad I retired from teaching last June. This would have driven me crazy all day long.
So you can both be on that train.
Yeah, he can pick you up on the way. Take the local, Chief.
Every day Saturday.
Totally jealous.
You can have Peter and Carl drive you down to the station.
They're the slowest 4 minutes ever. I'm like, how is it 8:58? Okay, it's 8:59.
We should have had like commercials or something. We could have like we'll be right back after this. And,
Right.
so,
We could have generated some revenue.
I don't
Lowered
know.
our taxes.
I'm going to say that with our attendees, there's 3 people. I don't know how much anyone would pay to have this.
But they're highly influential.
That is true.
It helped you afford those 2 new cops.
There you go.
They-
Should we pull up the second hand on the clock on the computer? 20 seconds per our agreement.
Arlene's getting ready to cheer.
I'm like holding my head up here because I'm so tired.
Oh,
Larry's hovering over the leave button right now. End the call. That's it. No more bets. No more bets.
we made it.
9 o'clock. Okay.
9 o'clock.
All right.
Come on,
people.
everybody. Stay
Good night,
safe.
everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Hey. Night, everyone. Take it easy. Be well.
Good night, all.
Thank you,
Right.
Kathy, again.